oftentimes thinking about faith and wondering if your faith is strong enough, it's awkward because it's like trying to stare at your own eyeball. I'm trying to think about what I think about what I believe, and there's this inward focusing on the state of your own belief that, in a sense, faith isn't supposed to be looking inward at itself. It's supposed to be looking outward at Jesus. And this is where sometimes it's helpful to point people to Jesus, right? Depending on the kind of doubt. I mean, go figure. This is one of those things where, and this approach is especially important, I think, when it comes to difficult questions in the Scripture.
Yeah.
So if it's like a material content issue, like I believe there's a God, or miracles, whatever, but like this specific passage, I have trouble with the Canaanite thing. I have trouble believing that the God of the Old Testament was this way, or that one of the most helpful and useful things is to ask somebody, okay, it's fine, you totally can struggle about what Genesis 1-3 means, right? Does it necessarily entail this theory of material origins and these many days and all that kind of stuff? It's fine. But what do you think about the verses in the middle of the Bible? What do you do with those, not Genesis 1-3, but what do you do with John 1:1? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. What do you do, and what do you do with what Jesus questions? Who do you say that I am? Because if you don't know what you think about Jesus, who cares what you think about Genesis 1-3? Right? If you don't know what you think about Jesus, honestly, who cares what you think about gay marriage? The gospel isn't, well, I think marriage is between a man and a woman. It is. Biblically, it's there. It's important, and it has big implications. But that's a secondary question to whether or not Jesus Christ lived, died, rose again, proving that he was who he said he was. That's what Paul hangs it all on in 1 Corinthians 15.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things where if you're really struggling with these verses, let's table that for a few minutes. We can come back to it because it's important. You do have to deal with it eventually. Well, what do you think about Jesus?
Yeah.
And if you can get clear on Jesus, well, then what does he start to say about these things?
Yeah, that's right.
And so that I have found to be one of the most helpful things, because looking at Jesus, I mean, that's a win-win. I mean, there's no going wrong with spending your time focusing on Jesus. He's the sum and the source of the gospel. Looking at him inspires trust. Looking at him gives you reason to trust him in the difficult times, because look at what he did in the difficult times. Look at what he's done for you. It's the root of authority, right? How are you, if you think he's the Son of God who rose from the dead, and he affirms the Old Testament, well, you got to do something with it.
Yeah.
If he had this view of marriage, well, you got to do something with it.
Yeah.
But if you don't think he's that, who cares?
In some ways, the way I describe and I think you'll be comfortable with this, but you can push back, is that it's how are you building kind of your web of beliefs, and if Jesus is at the center of that, that's going to look, or maybe you say your house of faith. How is your house of faith built? And if Jesus is at the foundation of that, that's going to look differently than maybe if you're putting some other things that are true.
Yeah.
But you're trying to put that at the foundation.
Yeah.
And so but when Jesus is actually at the foundation of your faith, and you build from there, then somebody can critique your view, or pull out your view, or cast doubt on some views of other things, and you go back, but Jesus is still at the foundation there, and that's the core.
Yeah.
Versus some other things that sometimes, even as evangelicals, become the priority for certain groups, and that becomes the thing rather than Jesus becoming the thing. But Jesus has bearing on all of life, and if Jesus is Lord, it's going to affect how you view marriage, how you view the Old Testament, the authority you give it, as you've mentioned. But it's where you're starting, where are you building your house, so to speak, is the way I put it.